Welcome to the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra.
And I'm Gayatri.
We bring you interesting, untold stories of people
Associated with the creation
Or consumption of software-based solutions.
You'll hear stories of what worked,
and sometimes what didn't,
you will also hear very personal experiences.
and insights that would trigger your thoughts
And inspire you to do even greater things.
Before we jump into today's conversation, a special thanks to PM Power Consulting for encouraging and supporting this show right from the start. With over 1,000 person-years of collective experience, PM Power has helped many organizations, teams, and individuals chart out their own journeys of excellence and make progress. Thank you, PM Power. Now, let's move to today's episode. My guest today is Chander Sankaran, an ERP and change management specialist with a professional background in finance and accounting. He has played many cross-functional roles that bridge the gap between finance and information technology. In this conversation, Chander talks about beginning his career in finance and accounting, then entering software through early ERP implementation work with a manufacturing plant in India. His move to the US in the late 90s and how his accounting and operational background helped him stand out in consulting by giving him a stronger context for business requirements. He also talks about the critical factors required for smooth go-lives and the importance of change management for any enterprise technology work. He also talks about how factors such as global teams and hybrid work models require flexibility in any organizational change initiative. Of course, no conversation today is without AI being there. So he talks about the benefits of AI in improving individual productivity. Some concerns about AI's environmental footprint and its potential effect on entry-level roles is also discussed. He shares practical career advice, including keeping your resume updated, understanding that everyone is replaceable, helps in navigating one's career. And finally, he concludes with some personal practices for staying grounded. Listen on. Hi, Chander. Welcome to the Software People Stories.
Hey, thanks, Shivguru. Thanks for having me here, and good evening.
Good evening. Actually, I'm very happy that we got to connect. I found a reason to connect and then connect and talk leisurely for a while.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we used to be more regularly in touch when you were in India. That was many years ago. I'm also not very familiar with all the things that you've been doing, the exciting things. So we'll start with your origin story. You can share for the benefit of our listeners also your background and then how you got to be associated with IT, and then what are the kind of different roles that you've been doing, etc. And then we will take it from there.
It looks like it's been a long time ago. So I actually am an accountant. I did my chartered accountancy in India. I actually did my articleship in Pune. And for the first few years of my life, I worked for a cement company, ACC Cement, initially in Bombay. And thereafter, I moved to Bangalore. And that's where I think I met you more often there when I was in Bangalore. And it went on then I got an opportunity to work in one of the manufacturing locations in a place called Katni, which is almost like geographically the center of India. It's close to Jabalpur. And I decided, let me just take a chance because I wanted to get out of the job that I was doing. I went to Katni. And incidentally, that's where I think I would say I began my software journey, because I was going there as a plant controller. I worked there for maybe a year or so. Before that was one of the first plants that decided to migrate to SAP at that time. And interestingly, my boss there, or one of my senior bosses there, his name is Ashok Jain. I think he had just returned from the US, and his thinking was way forward-looking. Like when I think of it today, I think he's done a wonderful job, because he used to introduce us to concepts like outsourcing, how things can be done more efficiently by getting it done outside. So he was the one who basically proposed that we implement an ERP system in our plant, which was a refractory plant. Even though it was part of cement plant, It was basically refractories that used to be used by fertilizers and cement plants, etc.
Okay.
So that is where I started my software journey, and from there, within a couple of years, the market was hot for SAP, so I got opportunities from the US. So I moved to the US probably in 1998.
And then what has been happening the last 28 years?
Yes, and the good news was, I think one thing is with the accounting background and with some software skills, mainly from a architect and design perspective, it carried a lot of value. So when I came here, I worked with multiple companies. So again, the first few years, it's again going through the phase where you want to get settled here. So you want your permanent residency, green card, etc. So I worked for Capgemini, which was later acquired Ernst & Young, and it became Capgemini Ernst & Young. And then I worked for different companies. So Capgemini, there was a lot of travel. So I used to be on the road almost 5 days a week. I would say at least 45, 50 weeks a year.
Wow.
So I used to live on a suitcase is typically what I would say. But I think there used to be periods where I should stay for multiple weeks at the client site, but otherwise it was a lot of travel. So both in the US, overseas as well. So at some point, after 6 or 7 years, once I got my green card, I said that's enough of travel. It was taking a toll on me. So I moved to some company locally in Houston. So that's where I think since then I have been mostly in Houston, but I do a little bit of travel depending on the depending on the company's requirement. So I work for and Houston is definitely the headquarters for energy and oil and gas. So most of the time I used to work for oil and gas companies or chemical companies. And then every time you work for a few years, one interesting thing here is that every few years, either your company is acquired or your company acquires something else. So it is always something that you have to always be prepared. Yeah. So there was nothing called stability where you can say, I'm going to be with this company for X number of years. So that's really been very interesting. So that's one of the real lessons that I learned, because you can never say it's permanent. It could change in a day, it could change in a week, or it could change in a couple of years. But on an average, I would say that every 5 years, either our company has been acquired or we have acquired some other companies, and things and roles change. So currently I'm working for a oil and gas technology company here in Houston. It's present globally, but I work for them, and I've been with them for, I would say, almost close to 15 years.
Oh, wow. Again, in the ERP space?
The role is expanded, but I think I would basically say that primary core expertise is ERP, but then a lot of other areas, tax software or other areas.
Okay.
So that's basically a quick brief overview of where I am. But I think it's been quite interesting in terms of going through the several phases of transition, including early 90s when there was a lot of demand, and you saw the demand slump, and then towards 2008 when the financial markets collapsed, there were a lot of challenges. But each time you go through this, you survive, come back. I would say I can't say I can come back stronger, because you don't know when the next issue may occur. And of course, after COVID, I think most of the work environment changed. So we started going less to office, maybe once a week or twice a week. Generally, I think it's been more of work from home, but things are changing again. So a lot of people are now being asked to come back to work.
Okay, wonderful. I was just noting down a bunch of thoughts or questions that crossed my mind. The first is when you said you started with an accounting background and you went to play a controller role in one of the plants and all that. Now, from that to a consultant, where as a controller, you have not only visibility across the organization, but also have a strong say in terms of prioritizing what is needed to have a healthy organization financially. Whereas as a consultant, you are one level distanced from the operations while you're there. So how did that transition feel for you?
It's actually, at the beginning, it really helped a lot, because typically I noticed that most of the consultants, when they come, they don't really have a lot of knowledge on the operational side. They don't have a lot of knowledge on accounting, finance related concepts. Even today, when you have a lot of consultants that claim to be consultants in a specific domain, but they may not have domain experience. I think that's probably one thing where it's really helped me a lot, because again, I go meet heads of finance. When they talk to me about concepts of accounting or finance, it's much easier to grasp. And having worked in different areas, like I was an auditor before, like in the early phases of my career, I was an auditor, management auditor. Then I was working in the marketing division as a controller there, and then finally in the plant. So different phases, you get different experience. So I won't say I'm an expert there, but at least I know enough to basically understand what are the requirements. So I think that's been one of the key things. Like when I observe people around me, I'm not claiming that I know a lot, but I do think that's definitely adds some value to what you're providing to the business.
Yeah, interesting you mentioned domain, because that is something I wanted to ask. But is there a difference in accounting itself or in the domain between, let's say, India and the US, or in the US when you're dealing with multinationals, when they have operations across multiple countries?
Yes, definitely there are a lot of lot of differences. Of course, one thing is from a legal perspective that you have to comply to certain regulations, which in the US could be a different gap, or in India it could be different IFRS or whatever the requirements are. So that's one area. The taxes are going to the tax situation is going to be different. The compliance requirements are going to be different. I think again, especially in countries like India and I think a lot of countries have now introduced what they call as electronic invoicing or electronic accounting data. So everything is no longer going to be something that you need to file paper submissions. It's sent electronically in certain cases almost instantly. Just like I believe in the GST scenario, the invoices go and get validated. I think we do have a lot of countries where we do that.
Okay.
No, I'm just saying that there are probably a lot of areas, and even within the industry itself, there are certain industry segments where the accounting is going to be based on, like for example, utilities. I don't work in any of those, but I think utilities or energy, oil and gas, each of them have different accounting mechanisms, because depending on the assets that you have, the way you account for that in your books. I'm sure there are a lot of areas. I'm not specialized in this, but this is something that even within the industry, you can see a lot of variation.
So talking about that, these variations and having to handle probably conversions or even inter-entity accounting and things like that. Typically, this is one thing that I've heard some people say, is that as an employee, you have freedom and the company also invests in your learning. They say that mandatory so much of training per employee, or they send them to different courses, etc. Whereas the expectation from a consultant is to be productive on day one and kind of continuously. So with that kind of an expectation, how do you, or how have you found it possible to keep track of these various changes, various things that are happening, and also interpret that in the context of your client?
I think at least that was the case the first few years of my career when I was a consultant. Now I'm more of an employee, so I just have to focus on one specific employer, one specific area that I need to be fully familiar with.
Okay.
So again, instead of spreading your wings across and trying to understand a lot of things across different areas, I specialize and get into deeply into a specific area for my employer. So the one thing is, even with consulting, you had a lot of training opportunities. You should go to training, because from a consultant's perspective, that used to be your USP, where once you get training, you can go and be deployed to any of the clients and try to offer services or try to improve any of the processes, even if you're not an expert on their particular field or area. But being a full-time employee for the company, you just have to keep refining your processes, whatever you have today, and then work to introduce new changes, new systems. As and when things change in the market, you have to keep abreast of what is happening in the market. Again, you have a bigger team, so definitely it helps. And wherever you have some gaps in skill sets, then you try to get people from outside.
Now, a related thing is when you mentioned that there are a lot of changes happening, there are a lot of interoperability requirements, a lot of compliance requirements, regulatory things that you need to follow, and all that. When you want to implement all this as software solutions or based on technology, which may not come only from one vendor, right? Have you faced those kind of situations? And then how do you handle those when there are multiple moving parts, but you are accountable?
So again, I've not been in the role of a PMO that handles multiple projects. Even if you take a single area, you still have a lot of moving components. So you may have multiple software that you need to implement to get that particular solution going. You just have to understand all the different pieces involved, get the stakeholders together, and then come up with your plan. Because in many cases, you know very well that you have a target date and then you have to work backwards. You really don't get time to put everything together and then say what is your go live date. It's the other way around. So it all depends on, and at some point, as you go and implement the project, if everything goes well and good, that's nice. You go through the different phases of testing and say everything is looking good. But if something does not look good, then you start prioritizing on what needs to be happen, what needs to be ready, because in all probability the go live is not going to change. You still have to go live. So then you have to find out what needs to be in place, what can wait maybe a few weeks or a month after go live. So those are different things that you have to start working around, and it's just working on different projects. I think that is how you gain knowledge, experience. And one thing I've really learned here is just because things don't work doesn't mean that you're stuck. You'll have to find out what the options are, even if it means that sometimes you hear your bosses say that get 10 people working on this, even if it has to be done manually. It doesn't mean that we are going to delay an implementation because we don't have the solution. And there are going to be some creative, innovative ways of doing it until you are able to get the fix. And in some cases, the fixes may come from the vendor, which may take time. But in all probability, if you cannot ship, then it's a major issue. But if you can ship, but on the back end, in the back end office activities, there is some issue, then it's possible that they may say, let's find out what the workaround is.
When to implement this, you talked about working with vendors or working with the backend teams and so on. So as a domain person, how has the experience been in working with, say, the backend teams or the software engineering teams?
So again, typically with most projects, I think you have a group of people. Again, sometimes you're hands-on, you have to get your hands dirty and make sure that the teams understand. Classic example is whatever requirements you have may not be communicated properly, so the backend team may not fully be able to deliver because they don't understand the requirements. So the key thing is to make sure that everyone is aligned. I think that's probably going to be key. And of course, getting alignment, getting things in place and getting it done on time, and testing. So again, that's probably going to be the key to how you do well once you go live, because you can still go live. You could have a lot of bumpy, turbulent journey as we go live. But if you've done a good testing, then it's quite likely that you're basically going to say that you can go live, and probably you're going to have issues, but not too many. Yeah. So testing is going to be the key. And I'm less into actual software because yes, I work in ERP, but I'm basically responsible for getting the system designed so that it works for the business. So change management is one more area. So as much as I can say that I work in software, I'm also a change management person, because I need to make sure that whatever changes we do, I'm part of that, implementing that change and making sure that the business complies with that.
Yeah, that's nice, because it crossed my mind when you said that nowadays there's a greater person, you work from home and companies are expecting people to come back and all that. So when you talk about change management, how important is physical meetings or physical presence with the others? And how does it change when things are done remotely? Not only as a change agent for you, and also for the people who need to adapt to new things.
Yes, I think the good thing is having worked in the industry, I think it's probably almost 40 years now, 40 plus years. So most of my life I've been physically in the office, so that's got some advantages. And again, in my case, I used to travel a lot, so it's like I fly 1,200 miles away every week. So that had advantages, but then at the same time, with the way the things have changed in the industry across the globe, your team is no longer going to be in one particular location. You could have teams spread across. So you could have teams in India, Budapest, or it could be in Australia, Argentina. So as much as we can enforce that physically you need to go into office, in many cases, because of the teams, it's not going to be a one size fits all. So at least that is my personal opinion, even though many companies believe that they need to get people back to work. And of course, commuting is definitely a big challenge because people have to commute to go to work. And some of these, because of the global nature of some of the entities, the work can start very early in the morning. So it's no longer the typical 8 to 5, where you say that is my core hours. The core hours can be much before that. It can be late in the evenings. It can be early in the mornings. So it doesn't really make sense to necessarily say that physical presence is the best thing. But in certain scenarios, like if you have some key workshop discussions, requirements gathering, then I think it makes sense to have all the people in one place so that they can focus and be able to provide the information. Otherwise, what happens is out of sight, out of mind. So we don't know what people are doing, even though they may be dialed into a meeting. You're not sure what they're doing. So it's no different. Like even today, because of things like Zoom and WebEx or any other, we are able to talk. But it would be better that we meet in person over a cup of coffee and then have the same discussion. But that's the benefit of technology, with that you can reach out to anyone anytime, and it doesn't have to be during the regular office hours. You can always meet anytime during the day.
A related thing is
and one thing I would like to add is that at least for the younger people, definitely I know, as much as they may not like it, it would be good if they go to office, because interacting with the office will help build a network relationship, and that will help them along long way in their career. Because just being in your home all the time really is not going to get you the advantage of interacting with people. As much as you may be on calls every day with them, it's not going to have the same level of bonding that you would do when you're in a physical meeting room, or when you're going to get some coffee from the cafeteria.
So that would also require everybody else is also in the office, right?
That's correct. And that's become a challenge, but to the extent possible, if you can do it, I think that should be encouraged. And it depends on type of organization, because again, some organizations even now prefer that all of them work, because even if they come to office, they're going to be on phones and Zoom calls or WebEx. So it doesn't really make sense to come and sit in the office and do the same thing.
So related to that, at least one impression that I got when you mentioned that you work in the oil and gas, or earlier, whether it is the refractory, cement, and those kinds of things. These are more of the continuous process industries, right?
Yeah, there are some parts of the business, because some of these conglomerates are quite huge. So they probably have stakes in different areas. So
okay.
So not necessary that some of them could be discrete, but most of my experience has been in the area of process manufacturing.
So in that case, even to organize a meeting, because whenever the process stops or there is an escalation, then these people have to go back to the shop floor or get that fixed immediately, right? So has it been a challenge to have any, whether it is a planning or a strategy or progress updates and things like that, getting people from different locations, finding a common time on a consistent basis?
Depending on the type of company, depending on the project, I think the core project team has members that will be up to go people for discussions. Each of the team members may go back to the business, like the people on the floor, shop floor, to interact more. But from our perspective, I think it'll be the core project team that would basically be bearing bulk of the workload. You don't necessarily have to get everyone, because depending on the type of industry, it doesn't make sense to involve everyone. You just need someone who's very good in this subject matter knowledge. So SMEs, you get them on the project, and they are able to play a role of being that conduit between the project and the actual shop floor.
Okay. Both as a consultant, when you're engaged with multiple clients, or when you're engaged with a conglomerate, which you said has no different business interests and multiple probably business models and so on, how do you manage context switching?
Can you just elaborate on that?
Because once you start a thread with, let's say, one business unit or one business, one client, etc., it's probably going to continue for some time, right? It's not something that you finish in one meeting. So while this is going on, there may be other things also that you need to take care of from maybe a different business unit or a different leader or a different industry, things that come up, right? From a customer. So how do you kind of switch context? Maybe this week you're working on something, next week it is probably something else, or morning it's something. I don't know how your typical day looks like. That context switching for you, saying, okay, last time this is what we concluded, or this is what we said we should explore, and then we are waiting for answers on this, or suddenly this has happened, so that investment doesn't make sense, or now we have to accelerate something else. Now, all those kinds of things. How do you contextualize those?
See, I don't know whether I have specific experiences of that, because typically in most of the earlier phase when I was working on as a consultant, most of the projects used to run for several months. So it used to be with the same set of people, same set of clients. Yes, you could meet people from different business segments, but it was all related to implementing or getting those teams on board. So within a consultant, if I understand, as a consultant, you play a broader role because you may be with different clients, but it's not necessary that you're going to switch your hat every few days, because you could be with that client for several months before going to a new client. So there's always going to be that learning curve, because you learn, then you start contributing, and then you reach a phase when once you're offboarded from the project, then you go to a new client, and then the whole cycle starts all over again. So whereas with working for a corporation, like more as an employee, you need to know your business well, you need to know your business leaders. And again, as I said, every few years, companies, they either buy new other companies. So you need to be able to work to get new businesses integrated into your system. So those are interactions that doesn't happen all the time, but whenever it happens, it's going to be a phase where you work a lot to onboard those businesses into your company.
I think no conversation nowadays is complete without talking about your guest AI, right?
Okay.
So what has been your experience with AI, either in terms of your role, whether it has been helping or how you've been using it, and two, for the company, how has the experience with AI been? And based on that, maybe a couple of other follow-up questions.
I think there's always a push. Like, I think even before, maybe in the last 2 years, when we are hearing more of AI, I think right from probably more than a decade or little more than that, at least here, the leadership, they look for ways to make things faster. Now, whether it could be automating it through the traditional program scripts, whatever it is, or in the last 10 years, you had a lot of RPA tools, automation tools. So those are things that, how can I make things easier, faster for the business and reduce a lot of these manual work. So that's really been the core mantra of especially the people who sit in the CFO or those sort of C-level chairs, because they want to make things faster and they want to depend less on people to execute that, because that has a lot of cost and a lot of errors. So that's always been the case. And now with AI, I think things are probably going to change a lot, because at least I can't talk about much about what companies will do. But personally, for me, when I work, it's almost makes me much more productive, because it helps me understand things with a much more different perspective. It gives me a lot more background. And it's a lot of prodding. So I would say sometimes that I look at myself as a questioning officer, because AI is not going to give you anything without you probing it. So you could probably have to keep asking it until you get to a stage where you think the answers make a lot of sense. So it's not because hallucinations and all that, you've heard about that. So you just want to be sure. And even if you think AI is telling you this is the answer, you basically have to go back and ask it in a few different ways to make sure that the answers are consistent. I won't say that I'm a very heavy user, but for the functions that I use, I think it's amazing. The only thing is it's quite scary as well, because you think if it can do so much, and within the last 2-3 years, you don't know what else it can do. And personally for me, the other thing that actually is also a little bit concerning is we hear a lot of stories about how much water, heat, and all the other things, the fallouts of using the data centers and AI. So sometimes I believe, initially I thought it was fun getting all your answers, getting everything through AI, and it made things a lot more easier. But now I'm thinking that, do I really use it for everything, or do I use it only for things that actually I need validation, I need responses, because otherwise there's that ethical part of it that I've started thinking about. And again, I don't know, people say that it consumes a lot of water. Maybe in the future technologies could change. It also produces a lot of heat. And even within the communities, even in Texas, for example, there's a lot of debate about allowing data centers near their towns or homes. So that's always been that back of my mind, that just don't use it indiscriminately. Just use it for what you think makes sense from your work perspective. And if there are things that are quite basic, then you don't really have to go back and try to use AI. I don't know whether I'm right, wrong, but at least this has been my perspective.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong about it. In fact, it has been a concern in terms of the overall impact on the environment or the resources and all that. But there is a contra view. Again, before sharing that, has the use of these AI approaches or tools, in your case, has it saved you any time, or has it given you better confidence in terms of the outputs created, or both on the quality of life or the quality of the work done?
I think it's definitely adds to the productivity. So again, depending on the use case, depending on what you use, you're amazed that you're able to reinforce, revalidate what you have been thinking about, and getting data in a way that you can actually digest and present it to your leadership. So it's again, I don't say that as I said, I'm not a heavy user, but for the limited cases that I use, and I use it on a daily basis. So, but it's far superior than depending on people. When you talk to people, again, you may get different opinions from different people, but here also it's the same thing, but over a period of I would say a few minutes, just refining your questions and asking it again and again. I've never seen it basically. Sometimes people get irritated when you ask the same question again and again. Here it's like you can ask anything you want. It's still going to come back and say it's yes. It's also scary because, again, younger people, I don't know what opportunities. I think that's one of the things that we have to think about, because using this, it's possible that it impacts. It could potentially impact if AI starts getting much stronger and it's able to with all the different concepts that we have now. It's possible that in the future the entry-level jobs may no longer be there. But people who are domain experts, people who have the knowledge, I think I don't see that as a challenge for them right now, because as I said, you need to basically keep asking, and that's probably one of the advantages we have, having worked in different areas for the last 2-3 decades.
So my personal simplistic summarization of this is that internet helped us shrink distances. And with AI, now we are able to shrink time. Now, what probably took someone a lot more time to do, now you're able to do it faster. Having said that, I'm just reflecting on something that Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI, said in defense of the argument which says about the resource consumption. His point was, just think of if you were to have a human. Now, like you said, there are certain limitations that you have, or to create that kind of an expert, how much would it cost in terms of resources? If you say that the person will be mature after, even if it is 20 years or 25 years, now from childbirth to grow a person up to 25 years, what are all the resources that the person is consuming? Right? Only after that, the person is ready to respond to you. Now, that is probably not a very fair comparison, but broadly saying that what is the alternative? Yes, absolute terms, yes, it is definitely resource intensive. And also the concerns on environment and other things are there, irrespective of however clean energy you might have. Okay, because some of these are data centers are going in for nuclear energy, etc. But still, it does involve a lot of capital expense and indirectly promoting the economy. And like any other tool, the entry-level jobs, that is my personal opinion, will always be there. It is just that the expectation from an entry-level job is going to change. Just because you are fresh out of college wouldn't mean that you will only be an intern, or you will only be an intern for 6 months or 1 year. It can probably be less. How can you, again, that compressing the time factor, right? So the other thing, I'm just saying this purely for an argument's sake. If, say, half the people or 90% of the people decide not to use AI, all the data centers that are created, like these continuous process manufacturing, it has to run. It'll still consume all that without any benefit. So in a way, trying to spread it across multiple applications and multiple usage will probably be justifiable. But so far, the cost has not achieved that point, even though now we are seeing that costs are likely to come down.
Mhm.
The cost of this compute, many companies who have gone for a larger adoption found that their annual budget for computing has been exhausted in 4 months.
Yeah, that's what I have, like with all the agents being in place.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I think that's interesting, because I think that's something that came up. I think I read about that about 2 weeks ago. So they basically asked people to stop using it, or
right. So the I would say
the main concern is you said entry level jobs, but it's just a question that you need 10 people, or can you manage that with 2 people with AI?
Yeah.
I think, and definitely the world population is growing, so you're going to have a lot of new people coming out of college, and every year from each and every college you're going to have hundreds and thousands of people graduating. So do they have the job, and how long do they have to wait?
Mm.
And especially for a country like in India, like it's like you have a lot of people working, and if some of these jobs, even if they can partially be automated and they can reduce the number of people, then it's definitely a big problem for the youngsters. I'm not painting a doomsday picture, but I'm just saying that that's one of my observations of having seen AI, how powerful it is, and how many things it can do in a fraction of a second, in a fraction of a time that a person would have normally done. And it doesn't have to be like, it can be images, it can be anything.
Yeah, that's a real point. So before I get into some of the way in which you've handled the pressures of travel and work and all that, I wanted to know if you have any advice or guidance for 2 segments of people. One is those who are considering a career in IT. We just talked about possible negative impact of AI and all that. What should they be considering before taking a decision, or once they have decided what they should do? And the second is people who I call are mid-career people who might be facing a mid-career crisis. Questions of whether I should continue to do whatever I've been doing, should I change, should I do something else? Both switching into IT or out of IT. What would be your thoughts for that?
Yeah, rather than giving advice, what I would basically say is, as you mentioned, there are going to be opportunities no matter what. It may the numbers may shrink. You may not have the same level of opportunities, but opportunities will definitely exist, and there are probably going to be new skill sets that are going to be required. So that is one area where the people who are just graduating may think of getting into those areas. So it's not completely going to drain. So maybe if it's a starter level jobs where you're doing the basic coding, those may all go away, where you may not need all the people, but the typical the skills that AI requires, and those may still continue. And as with everything else, because even earlier the accounting was done with a group of manual people in a room, but with the computers, accounting is still being done, but with a reduced number of people. So it's almost like the same concept here. And for the people who are midlife, they've already seen this. So there's really nothing I can add, except that a few things I would like to definitely say is, having worked in the US, no one should think that they're indispensable. Everyone can be replaced, even if you are probably the main asset for the company. The companies may have challenges if you leave, but everyone is replaceable. And sometimes some of our bosses keeps referring to that in a pretty nasty way. They say, what happens if you get knocked by a bus tomorrow? So you just need to be prepared that you don't have to. Many people have the feeling that they're indispensable and they cannot be let go. It never happens. Like, you can be let go anytime. So that's one thing. Keep your resume ready. So even if you have been with the company for X number of years, keep your resume ready, so that in case there's a need, and even if you're not thinking of changing jobs, at least you know what the market is, what other opportunities are available. So keep your resume ready. And then just like maybe in the olden days, there's a lot of bonding within the company and the employees. So employees should continue in the same organization for several decades. But today, if you think you got a better opportunity outside in the market, you can always leave. There's nothing like yes, you may have to give the 2 weeks notice, or especially in US, you don't really have to give any notice if your job doesn't require you to give. But you're not wedded to a company, the company is not wedded to you. So tomorrow, if the company wants to get rid of you, they can do it. So in that way, while you work with the company, do your best, but it doesn't mean that you have to be disheartened if you're let go. It doesn't necessarily mean it's because of performance. It could be because the company has other plans and they want to let people go. And then again, the other thing that I would basically say is, before you join a job, ask for whatever you want from the company. Ask for anything you want. They may say yes, they may say no. But once you join, you should not regret and say, I should have asked for something more, because it's not going to work. You already joined, so they're not going to go and renegotiate. So that's something that I've seen a lot of people do, that because they feel that they have been underselling, but they should have known that before they took up a job.
Yeah.
So that's like
Good
basically so that's probably important, because you want to feel that once you join, you do your best. You shouldn't be really thinking about what did I lose, because that's not going to help you in any way. And the couple of other things is, at least that came with me after working in the industry for the last several decades, that you work, give your best, but there are certain things that are beyond your control. So there's nothing you can do. You have to go with the flow and then try to see if that can be a lessons learned for your next implementation, next journey. Now it could be weather, it could be loss of key people. So some things are beyond your control. Even though people may say that you can still build a lot of contingencies, it may not work in all cases. So that's one thing. And the second thing is this: I get my inspiration from Bhagavad Gita, but again, earlier it was like, what do I do? What are the rewards I get? Nowadays, I think I've gone beyond that. I said, what did I do? Did I do it well? Rewards or no rewards that may come, that's independent of what I do. So that's something that I wish I had known this before, but it's something that has really helped me settle down, because even if I don't get something, it's fine. Maybe it's the next time and it cannot be a rat's race, because everyone is expecting it. So not everyone will get what they want. I know it's a lot to digest, but I thought I'll just tell you all the things that I have learned, and maybe it's useful, maybe it's not useful, but
absolutely. I think these are coming from the heart, and then very practical things which seem easy, like you say, but then one needs to internalize it. So one corollary question to this is, when you say you need to keep your resume ready, how do you make sure that it is always value adding? When I can have a resume as of maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or 2 years ago, how do you keep adding value to yourself regularly?
See, the fact is, again, keep the resume short, because they don't have time, and most of them I at least have not really interviewed for a long time. But even though I've said that, keep a resume ready, I have it ready, but you just keep adding content to that, to the extent, again, you don't have to list every bit of work that you did, because it has to be concise. So you just focus on the things, and especially if at all you're called, then you'll get other opportunities to talk to the companies that are interviewing you. But just keep it short, simple, and what you think, just focus on what value add you did in your current job.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, focusing on what value add you did, not what all you did. Right?
Yes, I think that's going to be important, because people don't have time to read, and even when we get resumes, when we go through that, sometimes, especially in today's environment, you may get hundreds of resumes. So maybe some of them are screened, and only the top 5, 10 are sent to you. But even then, you just look at the keywords, you look at what contributions are there, and it's difficult just to look at the paper and make a decision. But then you have to go with what you have.
So the last question that I have to close this. You talked about a lot of changes in your life. One is about the shift from India to US. I'm assuming it's a big decision or big change for you as well as family. And then you also talked about a lot of travel that you used to do, being most of the year living out of a suitcase and so on. And then you also mentioned that your role is also one of a change management person. Now, with so much of change around you, and then something that you also have to do, are there any personal practices that help you stay grounded that you don't mind sharing?
See, I don't know whether there's specific practices that I do for this, but in a typical day, I shouldn't say that I do it all the 7 days, 52 weeks a year, but I do have my own personal time for some of my activities. It could be a simple thing like walking. I make it a point to go, even in the peak of Minnesota winter, St. Paul. I used to walk every day for at least 45 minutes, like wearing a jacket and with a shoe and with a chain on so that I don't slip and fall down. But it doesn't matter what the weather is. I would make it a point to go for a walk. I want some fresh air. I want to be out in the open. I'm not a person that can work in the gym or in the treadmill. So that was a point. So it keeps my mind distracted, and I can think about a lot of different things. So that's one thing. And I would definitely say yoga, like a little bit of yoga. I won't say meditation, but yoga, just to keep myself a little bit flexible. But beyond that, really, it's got nothing to do with the change management, but it's just that it helps me clear up my mind and it helps keep my body fit. So, and the third thing I said is I never sit at work. Most of the time I'm standing. So that way people may call me different things, but I don't want to be just sitting, and I like to move around. Even if it's for 30 seconds, I move around, come back, work, so that it gives me a little bit time to think about things that I may have to solve at the workplace.
Very nice, Chander. So on that note, thanks a lot for coming on the show and then sharing your story, experience, and your perspectives and tips.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We thank Siddharth for the music and Anita for promoting the Software People Stories.
If you like this episode,
Please subscribe on your favorite podcast client.
And spread the word in your network.
if you'd like to share your story,
Contact us at podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.